7 things you need to have in your bug out bag no matter where you live. Hey everybody, this is Michael with Asymmetrical Preparedness. We talk in the prepper community a lot about bug out bags. And a lot of people ask questions. What do I need? Do I need this? Do I need that? Well, my answer is always, it depends. So I wanted to cover a list of 7 things that are not it depends. They are things that you really need to have in your bug out bag if you really want to survive. But first, let's talk about bugging out a little bit. Bugging out versus bugging in. Obviously, bugging in is the best situation to be in because then you're in a familiar environment. You probably have a better ability to secure yourself. Maybe not. You have all your stuff. You have your food storage. You have all your supplies. You have network maybe. You know, it's just bugging out isn't the best situation. But if you have to bug out, you need that capability. So we're going to talk about the things today to have in your bug out bag as well as some other aspects of bugging out. For bugging out, you got to think about, so these are some of the factors I like thinking about in a bug out scenario. They are threats. What threats are in your area? What threats may be forcing you to bug out? What threats may be in between where you are and your bug out location? This is why you need to have alternate and tertiary bug out locations also. Then you also need to think about mobility. What's your ability to get to your bug out location? Your bug out plans, which include locations, routes, alternate routes, all that stuff, caches of supplies en route. What season are you in? And the added level of difficulty or the ease of getting to your bug out location due to the seasonal changes, the weather. Also the size of your group, the age demographics of your group, and the physical capabilities of your group or yourself. You need to think about those things are very important because those go into the decision-making process of bugging out in the first place and come to play into the fact of what you need in your bug out bag also. So before I go any further, please be a cool kid and subscribe. Hit that thumbs up button, comment below, share the videos, all those wonderful things that help with the algorithm, that help us reach more people, bring more people into the preparedness fold. Very important. So please hit that subscribe button. All right, so we also need to think about vehicular versus foot. Vehicular could take many forms. You could have your car, your truck, you could have a motorcycle, a bicycle, a horse, a donkey, a mule, a really big dog, or on foot. Heck, maybe you got rollerblades, roller skates, a scooter. I don't know. There are so many different ways that you could bug out, but we're talking about mainly foot. Or it doesn't matter if you're in a vehicle and you're bugging out in a vehicle, these 7 items still apply to what you need in there. All right, you also need to take into account your carrying capability and or capacity when you are designing your bug out bag. How physically fit are you? What is your ability to move over rough terrain carrying a load? These are all important things. Okay. I also talked about, I have a series on Patreon, so if you want to check that out, links in the description below. It is about bugging out. It is about security. It's bug out, security, and route. And it's a 5 or 6 part series about bugging out all the stuff, including, convoy operations, different things like that, what you need to think about en route to your bug out location. So that's a great series there on Patreon. Check it out. It's $1 a month. Come on. It's older videos, so you may have to scroll through a bunch of videos, but it's there. Okay. Let's get started with the numbers. Number 1. What is the most important thing in a survival situation? Number 1 thing in a survival situation is shelter. Yes, shelter. What is the most useful item for shelter that also has multiple uses? A tent is a tent. It has one purpose. You may be able to use it for other things also, but I like tarps. So I'd say number 1, tarp. You got to have a tarp. All right, so, and I don't want to just throw it out there. I want to talk about uses. I want to go into the weeds on this one. What kinds of things can you use a tarp for? Obviously for shelter, whether it be from cold, from the sun, whatever. Okay, you can also use it for rainwater collection. You can also use it to collect the evaporating water vapors in a solar situation where you're collecting the water via those methods. You can also use it as a ground cloth. And another thing we did, I can't remember if it was back in survival training in the military or if it was in Boy Scouts or what, but what we did is we had 550 cord and tarp, and we had to make a canoe to get from one side of the lake to the other. So what we did is we took a bunch of sticks, from trees, tree limbs, and bent them, tied them all together with a 550 cord, made the shell of a canoe, and then we wrapped it with the tarp, and then 550 corded it together, made an improvised canoe. You can do things like this. Also building, tarp would also be part of an improvised shelter. So yes, let me see. I'm trying to follow my notes here. Also, yes, evaporative skill, flotation device. Also, say you are having to do a river crossing and maybe your gear isn't waterproofed. So you can roll up all your gear in the tarp and float it across. Take all your clothes off if you need to, whatever. Put them all on the tarp, wrap it all together, and float across on it. Carry it across with you. There are a lot of uses for tarps. I'm not going to go into all of them, of course, but these are some of the ones I thought of right off the top of my head. So very, very, very useful item. And number 2 item I already mentioned. You need it in conjunction with the tarp for a lot of these things, which is 550 cord. What are we talking about? We're talking about parachute cord. You got the 5-strand, you got the 7-strand. I like the 7-strand better, but whatever. Get what you can. 550 cord has so many uses. I use it in the garden. I use it camping. I use it for shoelaces. I use it all over the place. So let's talk about some uses of 550 cord. Tying down your tarp, of course, like I just said. Shoelaces, I just said. Traps and snares. You can take the insides out, and you can also use them for fishing line. I'm not saying these are the best things to use for these applications, but you can make use of them in an emergency situation, a survival situation. All right, we got securing your gear. That's very important. A lot of times, a knife sheath, the Kydex sheath, when I'm attaching it to my tactical gear, I don't like having all those clips and stuff like that behind so the knife sticks out further and adding weight and floppiness and stuff. So I direct 550 cord through the holes in the Kydex sheath to my molly on my gear or my plate, wherever it is. And I cinch it because I can get it really nice and tight there. And then also, it secures it well, and I have a little extra 550 cord if I need to take it off and throw my knife somewhere else. Anyway, securing your gear. Hooking anything to your gear, tying down your tarp onto your pack, tying your sleeping roll onto your pack, whatever. Lots of different uses for that. Making improvised shelters, I just talked about that, and or boats, flotation devices. You can do a lot of things with 550 cord. Hanging bear bags. If any of you guys live in bear country, you know you want to put all your food items in a bag, tie it up with 550 cord, throw it up, pull it up in a tree, away from the tree, up in the branches, high enough so a bear can't get to it, because you don't want them eating all your food. You also want it wrapped in such a way that it doesn't attract them, hopefully, in the first place, which you could use a tarp for, or a big a contractor bag, a big trash bag, something like that. Okay, yeah, boats, hanging bear bags, fishing. Yep, you can use it for fishing line. I'm not saying it's the best, but you could use it. I got a story here, a use of 550 cord that will probably blow your mind. So, going up to our primary bug out location, which is our cabin on acreage on the very, very top of a mountain, about 5,000 foot elevation, somewhere that I don't need to say where, because you don't need to know because of OPSEC. But anyway, we're going up there, very, very, very remote. I mean, we'd have to run like 15 miles of power lines to get power up there. It's crazy. There's like maybe 2 or 3 people within 5 miles of where our location is. So it's extremely remote. Off-grid, completely off-grid. So going up there, we hadn't, it had been a couple months, a season or something like that since we'd been up there. There was a wildfire that went through the area, so a bunch of the trees had fallen down over the road. Okay, me being a prepper, what do I have in my truck? I have my chainsaw, I have my tow straps, I have my ratchet straps, I have my come-alongs, I have my axes, all this stuff. You know where I have it? I have it in my truck toolbox, underneath my camper shell, at the front of my bed of my truck, with the rest of the back of the truck full of stuff for our trip. So it would have taken me forever to actually get to that stuff. So what did I do? I used this. I had a 1,000-foot roll of 550 cord. So what did I do? I hooked it around my tow hooks on my truck. This is a 1-ton diesel truck. You got to remember, lots of torque and power. Wrapped it around the log, around the tow hook, around the log, around the tow hook, around the log, around the tow hook. Bunch of times, tied it really good. Boom! Pulled that big, and I'm talking, one of the logs is this big, that big around, one of the trees. I pulled it off of the road, out of the way, clearing the road with 550 cord. Not kidding. Not kidding. I did a video about it when I did that. So it's probably 2 years ago video. If you look back, you can see where I talked about that. But anyway, so a lot of uses for 550 cord. Okay, so let's go on to number 3. Number 3 is socks. Anybody that has been boots on the ground, infantry role, and or backpacker, expedition, mountaineering, mountain climber, anybody that's spent a lot of time out in the middle of nowhere in adverse conditions on their feet knows how important socks are. Socks are so important. There's another part that goes along with socks, but we'll get to that in a minute. I recommend, even if you're in a hot environment, I recommend merino wool socks, at least 70%, because they still breathe fairly well. They're not itchy like regular wool, and they'll keep you warm. They, even if they're wet, they'll still keep you warm. In a hot environment, your feet are gonna sweat. I mean, they will. Cotton socks suck. I don't like cotton socks. They will keep you warm, they will breathe, and I highly recommend merino wool socks. Several extra pairs. You will be glad you kept them. And in your bug out bag, what you can do to make sure that they are nice and dry is you can put them in a Ziploc bag. But even better yet, you can vacuum seal a couple pairs of socks in a bag. I recommend vacuum sealing each individual pair by itself, so whenever you cut it open, you're not compromising the seal for your other socks. But sure, take 3 or 4 pairs of merino wool socks, vacuum seal them down. It takes almost no space. I mean, it vacuum seals it down nice and tight, and then you always have dry socks. Well, actually, vacuum seal them down individually, and then put all of them in a Ziploc bag, roll it up, put it in there, and you're good to go. Okay, so socks. Number 4, foot powder. Anybody that's been in those situations, the same ones I just mentioned, especially in the military, you know how important foot powder is. You got to keep your feet dry, and you got to keep your feet warm. Because in World War I, they called it trench foot, because they were always in these trenches and it rained and stuff like that, so it was always wet, and so their feet were always wet, and so they called it trench foot. World War II, Korea, Vietnam, there was like jungle rot or different things. It's foot fungus. You got to take care of your feet. Number one thing, if you're in a bug out situation on foot, same with an infantryman, same with if you're out patrolling, same if you're out bugging out, if you're mountaineering, whatever it is, you're out on a long range hike, you gotta take care of your feet. Number one thing. All right, so foot powder. Number 5. Number 5 is one of my favorites, duct tape. Why? Because you can use it for securing loads. Same with 550 cord. You can use it for making improvised shelters. You can use it for making flotation devices. You can use it for making, setting up your tarp and your shelter. Another great thing is if your tarp gets a hole in it, you can use duct tape to fix the hole, and it'll be waterproof. That's important. Also, anti-chafing. I have known people in certain military training that I went through that actually put duct tape on the insides of their thighs so that when they're running and doing a lot of hiking and walking, their thighs weren't chafing and rubbing on each other. Hey, Also, people use Vaseline for that also, but I know people use duct tape for that. Duct tape, where am I at? Right here. Oh yeah, tarp repair, already mentioned that. Hot spots on your feet. If you're getting a hot spot, throw some duct tape on there. It'll help protect your feet from getting blisters. What's the other one? Oh, medical applications also. Take some rolled gauze, roll it up there, put it on the wound, duct tape it on. It'll hold the gauze in place. And if you do the layers fully covering the wound, it'll also help keep it clean. So that's a good use for it. Let me see. Oh yeah, covering your muzzle, right? Covering that end so that dirt and mud and water don't get in there. Don't want that. And don't worry about it. The first time you let one of those seeds go, it'll blow it off. So you don't have to worry about that. It's not going to impede anything like that. But you want to make sure that's taken care of. So that's duct tape. All right, number 6 is actually 2 items. I combine them because they go together. Map and compass. If you're on foot and you're bugging out, you have to have a map and compass. Even if you are not on foot, even if you're in a vehicle, because what happens if you are in your primary bug out route and something happens en route and you can't get there? And then you reverse around, you start taking your alternate route. And then you can't get that way for some reason, or you know you can't get that way, so you go to tertiary route. You go to your third option. And then partway there, it becomes untenable. That bridges out, whatever. And then you got to transition to foot. And or the threats in the area make it so you cannot use that route or that path. So you got to cut brush, go cross country, right? So you got to have a map and compass because you never know what's going to happen. You may think, oh, I'm just going to jump in my vehicle, we're going to drive there, but that's not what's going to happen. Murphy's Law, what can go wrong will go wrong. So you need to plan for this. And of course, you got to know how to use it. If you don't know how to use a map and compass, if you don't know how to perform proper land navigation, you're SOL. So land navigation, a vital prepper skill. Number 7, last but not least, binoculars. You're like, what? That's not a need. Au contraire. This is why I say binoculars. Situational awareness. I can be sitting up here hiking along and I can scan the horizon, which will help me stay aware of threats, potential threats. Also, you can be scanning ahead. You can scan ahead and say, okay, hey, we need to cross that river up there, or we need to cross that valley. So you look down there and you'd be like, oh shoot, the rains swelled the river or created a river where there was none now, and now it's not passable. So now we got to figure out another way around it. It speeds up your journey, it makes it safer, and it allows you to know what's going on around you, which is very important. Also, scope out terrain, be aware of threats, and avoid danger. These are very good things. And it'll also help you figure out the best routes to your bug out location, if this is what you're doing. I know, I already mentioned map and compass. If you know how to read terrain features, you can already read them. But on a topographical map, you're still not really getting the full picture, especially if you're not as experienced with that use. You can't picture it up here what it actually looks like in real life. You just see these little lines and you say, okay, yeah, I know that's an incline, that's a decline. Well, you may not really understand the complexity of that terrain unless you have eyes on. So this is a must-have item. And to make my wife happy, I have a bonus, number 8, chapstick. She says you gotta have it, so I have to put it on there. Anyway, I love you guys very much. Please continue prepping. Make sure you got these things in your bag. Make sure you know how to use them, know how to make shelters, know how to land navigation, know how to make sure you know how to take care of your feet. All these things are very important. So have a wonderful day, and blessings to you and yours.